First of all, good afternoon to everyone, and thank you all for joining ABCK-AmCham Kuwait's webinar on 6 ways to launch a startup business idea, jointly with our speaker, Mr. Abdulla Hassan, who is the founder and CEO of Dhow Capital. Before introducing the speaker, I would like to remind you, if you have not done so already, please follow us on social media at ABCK1985 for more of our initiatives and events. And you can go to our website at www.abckw.org to learn more about what we are and what we do as a chamber and how to become a member. Now, I would like to introduce Mr. Abdulla. Mr. Abdulla has more than 25 years of experience in professional executive management. He is also a global public speaker, strategist, consultant, coach, facilitator, and he is a mentor to leaders and businesses. Mr. Abdulla specializes in helping people understand entrepreneurship, self-confidence, and leadership from a pragmatic standpoint. His approach is structured towards validating, encouraging good potential, and helping people achieve clarity, awareness, and accountability. He drives people to be more based on what resources exist within people that can be used versus the typical approach of ideal resources needed to succeed. Mr. Abdulla has a tailor-made workshop that opens new doors on understanding each of his topics and engages his audience online to create an amazing ambience of creative engagement. Mr. Abdulla Hassan currently is a successful VC tech fund in the UK, while adding his experience in business strategy on board to several companies that include other multinational giants like Mercedes, Sony, Aramex, and Intel, among others. He recently got inducted to Oxford University Training and Education Startup as a member of the advisory board and guest lecturer. Finally, please note that we will unmute your microphones during the Q&A, so if you have any questions, kindly raise your hand on the icon or type your question into the Q&A. Mr. Abdulla, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm very happy to be here today, and it's lovely to speak to people and let them understand the concept of entrepreneurship. Now, before I begin that, because very recently someone I knew was infected with COVID-19, and that person is extremely in a bad situation now. It's important for me to express to everybody the importance of being safe and trying to follow rules set down by the government and the Ministry of Health, which is in the interest of everybody, that we love, and the interest of people in general, which is something that all countries around the world are trying to promote. And we as people, we as individuals, we as citizens, we as residents have to try and follow. This is a situation unlike others, and I think it's important for us to maintain social distance. And today we're doing this online, and that is one of the reasons. So jumping into the topic, so today we're going to talk about entrepreneurship and why entrepreneurship is important. And you will understand that today globally, everybody is moving towards the concept of innovation. And innovation is the one reason why smaller countries have succeeded over larger countries. So if you look at the history of Singapore, Singapore is quite a small country, had a very small and reasonable past, did not have too many resources, natural resources to count on, no real oil, no real gas, no real gold or minerals. But they had a concept, a vision, which was built around innovation, and today they are one of the strongest economies in the world. Germany, after the Second World War, again, had lost everything, but it was innovation and their commitment to delivering to innovation to the next level that allows them to be one of the biggest economic giants in the world. America, United States, went through several phases of downturns. In fact, the largest depression that they had was the stock market collapse in the 30s, which actually only ended because of the World War II that started. But people in America decided to innovate and tried to create new ideas, new concepts, and those new ideas and concepts made them and the country succeed. Why is entrepreneurship important? Entrepreneurship is important because in the last 10 years, the only sector that has created more new jobs than any other organized sector is actually entrepreneurship. And there's a lot of support that's going to the startup world. And I think understanding entrepreneurship will today allow you to know how you as people could be entrepreneurs. So what I'm going to discuss is a few issues, few things, few topics that you can focus on. So the first is, why do startup fail? I need for you to understand what is the core reasons of failure within the startup world. Then 6 good ways of coming up with a good startup idea. Then the importance of validation, the importance of asking why 5 times, what are investors looking for, and the mantra of entrepreneurial success. So this is what we're going to go through today. And once I've finished my slides, then you can ask me questions, and then we can see where we can go with that. All right. So pay attention, because some of these may actually help you transform your ideas if you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. So as the introduction was given about me, I'll just spend some more time on it. I currently head a venture capital fund that is based out of the British Virgin Islands, but focuses on investments in the UK. And we have invested in 15 early stage startups, and some of them are doing globally very well, and some of which I'm on the board of. So for example, What 3 Words is a GPS mapping system that allows you, it's like Google Maps, but a little different. It basically divided planet Earth into 57 trillion boxes of 3 by 3 meters, and each of these boxes has a random 3-word address. So probably where you're sitting now could be called house.cat.car. And if I needed to reach you, I could come exactly within that 3 by 3 meter box. Guess what? If you were fishing in the sea, I could reach you there. If you were hiking in the mountains, I could reach you there. So after we invested, Mercedes, the German car manufacturer, invested in it. So today, if you bought a Mercedes in Kuwait, the GPS navigation system will be a What 3 Words voice-activated system, which means you do not have to put in a block, you do not have to put an area or a street name, you just have to refer the 3-word address that you have that to verbally, because it's voice-activated, and the car, Mercedes, will take you there. Sony invested after us, Aromax invested, and Intel Capital invested as well. I've spent enough time understanding technology. I used to work with British Telecom. I was head of strategy and business development here in this region, Middle East, North Africa, for about 8 years. BT is known for innovation. BT is known for technological excellence. BT has created some of the most well-known technologies that you and I engage with today. So Wi-Fi was something that BT created. The protocol of Wi-Fi was done at a BT lab at Stowe Park in Luton. My experience with working with family businesses has helped me understand the local culture, has helped me understand how businesses are done in the Middle East. And I put all of this together when we launched our venture capital fund. We also have a co-investment of a fund in America, which has invested in one of the most successful fintech startups in the world called Robinhood. Robinhood went from being around $7 or $8 million worth in 2003 to currently being worth around $15 billion to $20 billion. So we pride ourselves in such investments. We pride ourselves in such involvement and inductions. But I think what I take from all of this is learning and knowledge, which hopefully I will share with you all today. So this workshop that you're attending today has been something that I've been doing for a while. It's been attended by people from around 17 countries and 94 cities. At one given time, I had probably more than 1,000 attendees trying to understand and learn what this workshop is all about. Because every regular person who's been working, who has a day job, a 9-to-5 job, someone who's sitting at home, everybody's thinking about, how can I launch my startup? What do I need to do to launch my startup? What are the areas of thinking that I need to understand? Because there's a bit of science in it. And today in this session, you will kind of understand some of those elements that you need to have, that you need to consider, so that you can become, hopefully, a successful entrepreneur. So basically, there are 3 areas of focus, right? So we go from the ideation stage to the validation stage to the stage of starting up your business. The ideation stage is where you have that eureka moment. You know, you wake up from sleep and you think, wow, I have a great idea. You come out of shower, you have a great idea. You were talking to a friend at the coffee shop. You ended up with a great idea. You were just reading a book, you came up with a great idea. you were listening to a TED Talk and you came up with a great idea. Now, the great idea is always nice, but great ideas do not end up becoming great businesses. You need to understand that. The churn of a great idea to a great business is probably around 2% or maybe 3% at best. Because great ideas have a lot of unknowns. Great ideas have a lot of too much of positivity. Great ideas don't have reality as a juice within it for it to work. So how do you get a great idea to be a great business? You need to go through validation. Why? Because you need to make sure that your idea is really good. You need to make sure that there is a real customer for your idea. You need to make sure that your customer that is willing to entertain your idea is willing to pay for that idea. And then you need to set up your business, the startup phase, which is the structure, how does the business look, which is the market that you immediately want to address, how are you going to decide on your go-to-market strategy, who are your investors, do you need a board, do you need mentors, who's your team, who are your co-founders, the whole structure around setting up a business. So there are 3 stages: the ideation stage, the validation stage, and the startup business stage. So today we are going to just stick to the first 2 because the last one is a little bit more detailed and a lot of technicals need to be involved in it, which this in today's session is not really something that you would want you to kind of get involved with. So let's first talk about why do most startups fail, right? So everybody tells you about successful startups and tells you about success stories of Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs and blah, blah, blah. But what they don't tell you is the bad side. So today, I'll not share this with you as a bad side. I'll share it with you as a fact that you need to be aware of, because it will help you create a more robust idea that could be a successful, sustainable business. So why do most startups fail? Number 1, whatever it was your idea, business idea, was not needed in the market. You thought it was a great idea. Friends that you talked to thought it was a great idea. Your mom, your dad, your husband, your wife, your friends, they thought it was a great idea, but the market never really needed that. So there was no real need for that idea in the market, so you failed. Number 1. Number 2, your idea was great, but you were the wrong person to launch it. Why? Because you didn't have experience. You didn't know how to manage this, because experience plays a huge role in driving success, right? So if you're not aware of something from a technical standpoint, from an operational standpoint, you're most likely to fail. So no experience is one of the reasons why you have failure. Then you never had a good revenue model. You always thought about the idea is great, everybody's giving me a lot of applause and pats on the back, and I'm raising some money, but you never thought about making money. So there was no sustainability in that business idea. Hence, your idea failed. Your product, whatever your idea was not friendly. People could not engage with it easily. It was a great idea, but your interface, your user interface, your engagement model was not correct. Hence, people could not get on board. They thought this is too difficult for me to engage with. I'm not going to spend 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes just trying to click this and click that. So your product was very friendly. Then, of course, the important one, that you never took customer insights before you launched your final product, before you went to market. You never really sat with enough customers to take their input and create an offering that was actually something that was customer relevant and not just your idea relevant. Then, of course, there are ideas that you would come up, great ideas, brilliant ideas in Kuwait, but they're not fit for Kuwait. They're probably fit for New York. They're probably fit for London. They're probably fit for Berlin and Munich. So sometimes your idea is great, but your market is wrong. So you need to pay attention to that. Sometimes you get engaged with the wrong investor. So you're trying to raise money and you're in urgency of raising and going to market and launching your whole idea. And guess what? Your investor is the wrong person, because this person is constantly on your back, trying to pressure you, giving you a lot of negative vibes, and you get really stressed. I've seen a lot of businesses fail because of bad investors, by the way. So you have to be very careful about who your investors are. So the way they interview you, you have to interview them as well, because that's very important. And finally, wrong mentors. Most people don't understand the concept of mentorship. Today, everybody who's a professional who has a C to his title, a chief executive officer, a chief business officer, a chief financial officer, a chief operation officer, or a president or a chairman, And people think that these people are perfect mentors. They're not. Mentor is someone who can add value to your relevant business idea, someone who has the time to spend with you, someone who can create excellence that doesn't exist in your existing effort or your design. Now, those are mentors. Those are the type of people that you need to get on board, and those are the people that can help your business. So wrong investors and wrong mentors are one of the major reasons why people fail in their startup ideas. Now, bear in mind, according to research, almost 90%, so worst case scenario is 95%, a lower case scenario is around 80%, but the average number given is 90%. There's 90% failure in the startup world. Now, why am I referring that to you today? I'm referring that to you today is because if you are launching a startup idea and if you didn't pay attention to what I just said about what you don't need to do and you need to be careful about, most likely you will fizzle out within year 2 or year 3. Most startups do not last more than that because they had all of these elements that I showed you: no experience, no revenue model, product unfriendly, no customer insight, etc., as their core issues because of which they were not successful. And guess what happens? You launch a startup, you raise money, they're investors. Now you hire people, right? You created jobs. That was a good thing. Now what happens when you shut down? Those people who work for you, your employees, now no longer have jobs and they go back to stress. Now they go back to job hunting, which is not a great place to be. So you need to take entrepreneurship very responsibly. I think one of the biggest things that plagues the startup world is lack of responsibility. I think everybody thinks that being the founder of a startup idea is all about, gala events and launch parties and interviews with media. No, I think it's about driving the new economic success of the world. And if we don't learn anything from the dot-com bubble burst in San Diego and other such economic downturns, we will again create more disparity within the economic cycle, which is really not what you need looking at what COVID-19 has done to the economic numbers globally. So I think responsibility to an entrepreneur, to a founder, is very important. So I want you to look at this and understand this reasons of failure very, very carefully, because you will be responsible for your success and you will be responsible for your failure. So how to come up with successful startup ideas. So here's step number 1 of coming up with successful startup ideas. So is there a skill that you're good at? So you're good at something, right? So let's say you were a chartered accountant and this is what you're good at. So most likely the startup idea that you need to consider, I wouldn't say that's the only thing you need to consider, is that you come up with a fintech startup idea. So you launch a new ERP, something that competes with an Oracle, something that you understand, something that is your operational excellence, something that you have experience with, something that allows you to be in a commanding, controlling position, something that puts you in that whole pilot, captain of the ship kind of position. Those are the kind of ideas that have rather high chances for you to succeed and to get adoption within the marketplace, because your customers will recognize whether you are in control or no. Your investors will recognize whether you're in control or no. And that is why one of the best ways of coming up with a good, successful startup idea is a skill that you're good at. What is the second one? Second one is very unique because most famous startups that you and I know about, which is Airbnb, Instagram, you name it, almost all of them came out of this. That there's something that disturbs you for a while, and you decided to end that with a solution. You decided to end the problem with a solution. So the solution can be the seed of your transformation business idea. So I met someone who was a dentist, and every time he looked outside the window, he's an Italian in Rome, and he said, every time I look out of the window, I would see traffic, and I would always say, oh my God, there's so much traffic in Rome. Oh, there's so much traffic in Rome. One day he just took a pen and a paper and he decided to convert that problem into a solution, and that solution today is one of the most innovative ways of coming out of traffic. So he basically converted a train on wheels. So the minute you put a train, a physical train on wheels, regular tires, it allows you to transform the transportation system in a very fundamental way. Number one, you don't need tracks because it has wheels. Number two, you don't need to acquire more land because it can run on roads that already exist. And number three, it forces people to leave their car and go into this train that connects itself every time. So there are modules within that train that disconnect and go to different areas. So it's not like one big train going all the way to Kuwait City. No, it will be one big train where I sit in Jabriya and you sit in Salmiya, and we both want to go to Kuwait City. So we sit in the module in the compartment that is going to go to Kuwait City, and the rest sit in the compartment that will go to Shab, etc., etc. And these are the kind of ideas that basically started to develop the transformation of good business ideas. So one of the ways of coming up with a good business idea is a problem that has been disturbing you for a while, and you decided to end it with a solution. Number three way of coming up with a good, successful business idea is you wait for something successful and then you try to be part of its eco-cycle. So, for example, you see Zain new building coming up in an area close to you, and you decide to launch a mobile repair shop. Most likely you'll get a lot of business. Why? Because there'll be a lot of business people going to Zain's building, and they will want to look at some servicing or maintenance or repair for their mobile phones, and you could be a good option. So completing a successful brand has become a very good way for a lot of young entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, to basically develop their startup idea. What is the fourth way? The fourth way is for you to be innovative. The fourth way is for you to be a visionary. Now, this is something that people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates did. They were visionaries. They thought about a world that would change, and they decided to set that change for the world. So there's a lot of things that are happening today that we can predict very easily, and COVID-19 has helped us a lot. COVID-19 has shown us that everybody is going to choose to stay at home. Everybody is going to choose to work from home. So whatever business idea that we do has to be relevant to that environment. And that is why this COVID-19 situation is actually a blessing for entrepreneurs, because now the environment definition is very clear. There's no confusion. There's no set of ifs and buts. It's very clear that people are going to choose to be indoors. Hence, most of your ideas will be moving around that. So look at the trends that are happening, and then look at what of those trends would shape the next few years. And if I was you, I would just target 2021 and 2022, because these will be defining moments for the world, depending on when the vaccine for COVID-19 comes or doesn't come. All right. So you can launch a lot of good, interesting business ideas, innovative business ideas that can help people, change the way they do things, and that could be your startup idea. Number 5 is one of the ways of coming up with a good business startup idea is to be attentive, right? So this particular image that you see, this lock that is on the door, this has been on the door for a number of years, right? So your father had it on his door, his grandfather had it on his door, and his great-grandfather had it on his door, because the concept of a lock was to do only one thing: secure people on the inside and keep people who are not supposed to be inside outside. And for many, many years, nobody paid attention to the fact, even though technology was launched, internet was launched, mobiles were launched, mobile phones were launched, applications were launched, and we never thought about changing the lock. And someone came up with the bright idea of converting that lock into a smart lock, so that if I wanted to enter your house, you would give me this message, and it would basically then allow me to move from that session onto the next one and see if we can enter your house or no using a password, and that is how we went forward. So we were discussing about the successful ways of coming up with interesting startup ideas, and one of them was that you look around you and you don't really pay attention to things that have existed with you for a number of years, and you just take them for granted. So the lock is one of them, and today we have a digital lock that allows people to send you a code, and then you can enter into this space. The last idea or a way of coming up with a successful startup idea is that you make something that is available in the marketplace cheaper. So one of the reasons why Amazon is successful is that Amazon has the ability to take in a situation of a product and convert it into a cheaper product by giving you delivery at home, etc. Hang on a minute, I'm trying to send the slides to Paula and see if she can load it. Hang on. So one of the ways of making that successful is that you come up with an e-commerce platform that allows the product to be sold to customers in a cheaper way. Now, whatever idea that you come up with, the most important thing and the most interesting thing is the fact that you would need to have your idea validated. Most people don't understand that validation is actually much more important and much more relevant than anything that you're doing inside the idea. If you can't validate your idea correctly, then most likely what will happen is that your idea will fail. And if you don't understand how to validate, you will basically make sure that you're going ahead and launching your idea, and then that idea gets caught up with a lot of ifs and buts, and those ifs and buts basically end up with nothing but failure. So I think one of the most important things that you need to do is to have validation to your idea. Now, how do you validate your idea? You need to understand how validation takes place. Validation is an exercise which is actually very simple. Validation is an exercise where you talk to 100 strangers. 100 strangers. You don't talk to family, you don't talk to friends, you don't talk to people you know or they know you. Why? Because they'll be polite. They'll try to give you something which is just a good feedback. You don't need a good feedback. You need real feedback. So how do you get real feedback? You ask people 4 questions. The first thing you ask them is, you ask them that, do you think that this problem that you think is a problem is actually a problem? So for example, there's a traffic problem and you say, hey, do you agree with me that we need to do something about the traffic problem? And if they say yes, then say, okay, guess what? Which is your second question. Say, I have a solution to solve the traffic problem. Do you like my solution? Explain your business idea, explain your startup idea in detail. The person says, oh yeah, I think I love this solution. This is a brilliant solution. Then say, do you think that this solution or this problem is urgent? Is it a need of the hour or can it wait? Because it's very important to know how to position the launch of your startup. You can't be too early and you can't be too late, right? There were many businesses launched before Facebook and they failed because they were a little too early. So in the meantime, I think what you need to do is to get to know your so-called customers who say, hey, listen, we think this is a good idea and it's the need of the hour. Then the last question you ask them is, are you willing to pay if I launch this idea? Are you willing to pay for the solution? This solution, which is my startup idea, that I've launched an app that helps you basically keep away from traffic areas. I help you find the best route, etc. So you ask 100 strangers 4 questions. You ask them that, do they agree with you that this is a problem? Second question, do they agree with you about your solution for that problem? Third question, do they agree with you about the timing of that solution? That is this the time that you need for it to happen? And the fourth question, which is, do you think that if I launch this, you will pay for it to have it? Do you think you will pay for this solution? Because it becomes very relevant for you as a startup entrepreneur to basically go and find a marketplace, a market which has customers who are ready to actually pay for this. So what you need to do is validation. Validation is a slide much later after this. Go to the next slide. Yeah, further. Yeah. One more. Yeah, the next one. That's it. Stop there. So these are the 4 questions. It's interesting that the presentation had a technical glitch, and the most important slide is when everybody gets to see it. So that's very interesting, because every startup that I've engaged with around the world, every founder of a startup has this as a problem. They never do validation. Validation is the most important thing that you need to understand. You need to talk to 100 strangers and ask them these 4 questions. And those 100 strangers will basically lead you to understand whether your startup idea is good or whether it's bad. All right? Can you go to the next slide, please? You need to register this feedback. And when you register these feedback of these 4 questions that I talked about, you check whether the response is in the positive 80% or more. If it is in the positive of 80% and more, that means your idea is good and you should seriously think about launching that idea. This is a very safe way for anybody who's trying to go into entrepreneurship to validate your idea, to check whether it actually has firm ground, firm needs in the marketplace, firm customers who are willing to pay for it, before you actually dedicate your time or you dedicate investors' money into this. So you need to actually look into that. Go to the next slide, please. You need to ask 5 whys, okay? This is very important when you launch a startup, and most people don't understand the importance of asking whys. There are 5 whys which are very important. So I'll give you an example. The first why, because a particular server failed. I'm using an example. Why did it fail? Because an obscure subsystem was used in the wrong way. Why was it used in the wrong way? Because the engineer who was working on it was not skilled properly. Then you say, why didn't he know? Because he was never trained. And then you ask, why wasn't he trained? The answer you get is because his manager did not believe in training new engineers because he and his team were very busy. In the startup world, everything is so dynamic, so moving around all over the place. And you need to keep focus. And if you don't keep asking these whys, you might end up getting in trouble. Can you go to the next slide, please? The importance of asking this whys is, can we shift to the next slide? What happens when you ask this 5 whys? You get down to the root cause of any problem. You have a very analytical approach towards understanding what the problem is. And then you begin to develop a solution. Okay, when you understand any problem clearly from the root cause of it, you can be in a very good position to solve that problem by creating an incremental solution, because most problems don't have a straightforward solution. You need to break them into pieces and then solve the problem. You'd be surprised to know most of the time the problem is human, it's not even technical. Somebody was having a bad day, somebody was rude, somebody just forgot this, somebody just overthought about something. So the human problem in a startup world is much bigger than the technical problem, because the skills are always there. It's the human element that lets you down. So as a founder of a startup business, you need to control a lot of these things that happen with people that work for you. So the human element is what you need to look at. And these whys will help you evolve throughout the whole process, because the more you ask why and why and why, you're actually creating a sense of creativity within you that is very, very important for people to succeed in the startup world. Can you go to the next slide, please? So the benefits of the 5 whys. The root cause of a problem in a business is discovered using the 5 why approach. It prevents you from reoccurring a particular business problem. It helps you understand the root cause that created that problem in the first place, and it begins to distinguish between a symptom and the root cause of a problem. So you begin to become very forensic and not just someone who does analysis. You become very forensic. You get into a lot of detail, and that for a founder is very important. Can we go to the next slide, please? So one of the things that I generally get asked is, what do we do in this COVID-19 pandemic situation? How do we come up, build up a team, launch up a startup idea And what are investors really looking for in a startup idea? What do they really want? Can you go to the next slide, please? So what investors are looking for is just three areas. That's it. They're looking at revenue generating ideas. They're looking at quick turnaround ideas. They don't want an idea that takes too long to start and launch. They're looking at market relevant ideas. They're not looking at larger than life ideas anymore. They're looking at original ideas. So they're looking at revenue, they're looking at quick turnaround, and they're looking at market relevance, and they're looking at originality. What's the second area that they're looking at? They're looking at good business plans. Most startup founders don't understand the importance of a good business plan. Trust me, an investor will always look at your business plan and judge you for it. Good research. Investors look at what is the research that you've done. Good validation, and I've discussed about the 4 questions being asked to 100 strangers. Good validation. Good and crisp presentation. You have to have your presentation very well defined, very well articulated, very well presented, and there's a way to do it. The third area is that your pitch has to be correct. It has to be to the right people. You have to have a lot of confidence when you're pitching. Most founders of good ideas are not good at presenting because their confidence level is low. You should have good co-investors. You should walk into a pitch with some investors already. You should have good mentors, and most importantly, every investor wants to know who's working for you. How good is your team? Is your team as good as you? Is your team complementing you? Are you together a good click? Does this whole setup make sense to the investor? These 3 areas is what investors are looking for. Can you go to the next slide, please? I'll just share with you some of the big successful startups and what really happened with them. So Instagram was all about the founder who wanted to go on a holiday to Italy and didn't want to buy a new camera. He ended up borrowing a cheap plastic camera, and he came up with the idea of launching Instagram. Airbnb was a group of friends who were working on a business idea, and they didn't have money to pay for rent, so they actually ended up creating another business which was about renting mattresses, and that ended up leading to the big Airbnb, which is worth 31 billion today, which was born. Uber was about, again, a group of friends attending a tech seminar, conference, and got tired of waiting for a cab because there were like 1,000 people waiting for cabs outside the event, the exhibition, and there were like 200 or 300 cabs. And they said, well, why don't we do something which is sort of a limo share concept where one taxi can take in 3 or 4 people, and that's relatively how the idea was born. It came out of an immediate requirement, an immediate identification of a problem versus solution, and everybody worked on it, and it became a $70 billion company. Of course, Steve Jobs was a different story. Apple was completely different because it came from creating a desire to change the world, which he did. And even though he was not a developer, he was not a coder, Steve Wozniak was, but Steve Jobs was the visionary that had the ability to look at creating a device that could create a lot of focus for sophisticated users, and that's how Apple went from becoming a major failure to one of the world's largest success stories ever, with currently at around 2 trillion actually. Microsoft, of course, everybody knows about it. Now, this is all good. Looking at successful stories is very good. But what do you need to have as elements for you to be successful? So if you look at the left side of the slide, I've written my mantras of success. So number 1, if you want to be successful as a founder, as a startup entrepreneur, you have to pay attention. You have to pay attention to people. You have to pay attention to situations. You have to pay attention to things. You have to pay attention to relevant information. All of this attention helps you absorb knowledge. Most people are so determined about the completeness of their knowledge that they don't pay attention to others. You need to pay attention to everybody for you to develop yourself as a successful entrepreneur. Intrigue. You have to be intrigued. You need to have that drive to be involved in something in complete manner. There has to be no pause, no stop in it. You have to be constantly involved in it. Your intrigue, your interest, your level of positivity has to be always there. Number 3, you have to be creative, because if you're not creative, then what will happen is that you will not be able to create solutions. Creativity comes from a thinking that is not about 1 plus 1. So today, if I asked you how much is 5 plus 5, you will say 10. But guess what? If I ask the same question in China, how much is 5 plus 5, they will also say 10. And if I ask the same question in Australia, 5 plus 5, they'll say 10. So you will not become an entrepreneur by thinking like this. But what if I change the question? What if I said dash plus dash is 10? And if I asked you that question, most likely your answer will be 5 plus 5 is 10. If I ask the same question to someone in Australia, his answer might be 8 plus 2 is 10. If I ask the same question to someone in China, his answer might be 7 plus 3 is 10. But guess what? If I asked you the same question again, you might say, well, my answer now is different. It is 6.5 plus 3.5 is 10. The idea sometimes is not to look for the answer. The idea sometimes is to change the question. And that's what entrepreneurs are all about. They're about changing the question. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to understand the world of creativity to change the question. Number 4, you need to be focused. If you're not focused, you will never deliver success. Number 5, you need to be patient. Why? There's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of setbacks. There's a lot of failure in the world of entrepreneurship. I just said in the beginning of my talk, 90% failure happens in the world of entrepreneurship. So you need to basically be ready for that by being patient. Number 6, you need to have knowledge, relevant knowledge of what you're doing, of what you're trying to achieve, of what you're trying to create. Number 7, you need to have the vision, because if you can't see beyond, you will never see today. You need to believe in the vision that you have. Steve Jobs failed a number of times. Michael Jordan missed more than 300 very important shots. Michael Jordan was a single source of failure for his team, but he never stopped believing in himself. So you need to have the vision of what is the success that you're trying to achieve, and then you need to keep yourself driven to that. Number 8, be committed. No matter what happens, no matter what comes, you need to be committed. Number 9, you will not have all the skills yourself. If you look at all of these success stories that I've just referred to, Airbnb, Uber, Instagram, Apple, Microsoft, you will see that there's always a co-founder. There's always other people in it. Collaborate. Try to find other people like you who complement you, who make you a better and a stronger business idea. Try to collaborate. And number 10, anything that needs success in this world needs to have time. You need to give it time. If you can't give it time, if this is just your sidekick work, if this is just something that you do on a holiday, you're not an entrepreneur. You're just trying to get lucky. And trying to get lucky, if you really do, I suggest that you go to Las Vegas and attend a casino and try your luck there. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, entrepreneurs don't try their luck. People who launch startup ideas are not trying to get lucky. They're trying to create success. Entrepreneurship is about creating success. If you don't know how to create success, you can't be involved in innovation, and you can't be involved in trying to drive creativity. Can you go to the next slide, please? Now, this slide is very important. If you understand who's in control, because there's 3 parts of you. It's your body, you, the decision maker, and the brain. Your brain basically processes the information that you give it, information that's important to you, information that you give priority to, you qualify it, information that's knowledge, information that's passive knowledge, information that you consider as intelligence, and then based on that you make decisions and choices and options, and your body reacts to it. You should always know as an entrepreneur, no matter how much and how large the failure that you face, you will always be in control. And until and unless you believe in that, and until and unless you believe in the fact that you can turn things around, your body right there on the right side of the screen will not move. That is why most people who don't believe in themselves end up becoming very cold and very numb in a situation of failure. They don't know what to do. But you have to understand as an entrepreneur that failure is a process that you need to absorb. It's like a scientist, right? When a scientist is doing research, he or she is using failure as data. They call it data. They say that this is data that I now understand that I cannot use. So all these scientists around the world that are working on creating a vaccine for COVID-19 have had number of failures hour after hour for days and weeks and months with no sleep, no time with family, no real food, because their desire is to create a vaccine. They have moved their body beyond pain. They have moved their body beyond frustration. They have moved their body beyond any level of dismay, because their brain knows there is light at the end of the tunnel. And that's how successful entrepreneurs succeed. They're always in control. So I want all of you today listening to this to always realize this, because this slide decides and defines very well what you will achieve in your life as an entrepreneur. Can we go back to the first slide and go backwards slowly so that I can just run it through to people? So I'll just go slowly one by one. Okay, go to the next slide. Next one, please. Next one. Next one. So there are three phases in the world of startups. There's the ideation phase, the validation phase, and the startup phase. These are the three phases that you go through. Can I go to the next slide? The reason why most startups fail, if you look at the red part, it says no market need. There was never a need for this idea. No experience. The guy who launched or the girl who launched this idea did not have experience in that idea, in that business idea. No real revenue model. You never created a revenue model in the whole idea. Your product was unfriendly. People were not happy with the interface that they saw online. There was no customer insight. You never did validation. You never had the time for it. Wrong market. You launched the idea in Kuwait, but actually this is good for New York. It's good for London. Wrong investors. You had investors on board who were always on your back and giving you a lot of stress. And wrong mentors, people who had no relevant input into your idea. You just took them on board because they were chief executives of some company. Go to the next one, please. The 6 ways of coming up with successful business ideas. First way of coming up with a successful business idea is that you have a particular skill that you're good at. Let's assume you're a chartered accountant. You're the best person to launch a fintech because you understand accountancy, you understand finance, you understand the operation of finance in a company. So you're most likely to create a good, strong fintech that could possibly compete with Oracle. Okay, so you have a skill by which you made a new startup. Second way of coming up with a startup idea, there's a problem that has been disturbing you for a while and you decided to end the problem by creating a solution. The solution can be the seed of your transformation of the business idea. So a problem that you are suffering with, you decided to solve it, and most new major startups in the world have come up this way. Number 3, next slide, please. You complete a successful brand. So like I said, there's a Zain building next to your street and you launch a mobile repair store. Most likely you will get a lot of business. Why? Because you're complementing a big company that's already successful. There's a lot of young startups that have come this way around the world, and it's a very easy way to do it. Can you go to the next slide, please? You look at trends and how trends will transform the world. So COVID-19 is a trend. COVID-19 has shown people that everything will be online. Maybe you can come up with an interesting online business concept. Can you go to the next one, please? Look around you and you will see that there is a lot of things that have been with us and have not changed. So I mentioned to you the door lock, which was there for a number of years. It was with you, your father, grandfather, and his forefather, and nobody really decided to make it into something new until someone said, hey, why there's the mobile technology here, internet is here, why not make a digital lock? And a digital lock was made. So you can look around you, there will be so many things that have existed for a number of years. We've got cars existing from 1912, they haven't changed. We had landline telephone for 100 years after Alexander Graham Bell invented it. And after 100 years, we had mobile technology. The train still exists, okay? We just have a bullet train, but nothing beyond that. So there are a lot of things around us that have existed for a number of years, sometimes centuries. If you, the Mr. Entrepreneur or Miss Entrepreneur, want to change that, you can actually change it. Next slide, please. Making things cheaper, like I said, e-commerce platforms are good examples of it. Today, trying to get things at a cheaper rate at your doorstep is more convenient than going to a store and buying it. People like Alibaba and Amazon thrive with businesses like this. Amazon today is worth trillions by doing something like this. Next slide, please. We talked about how to validate your ideas. We talked about the 4 questions that you need to ask 100 strangers. Do they agree with your problem? Do they agree with the solution of your problem? Do they think it's the need of the hour? And are they willing to pay for it? You cannot ask these questions to your family, to your friends, to your neighbors, etc. You can ask them only to 100 strangers so they become relevant feedback. Next slide, please. You register this feedback, and if you have 80% or more positives on it, you most likely have a great idea that you need to consider to launch. Next, please. We talked about the whys. Go on. Next slide. Next slide. Why is it important for you to ask this? Because it helps you understand a problem. It helps you stop that problem helping again and again. It helps you build an organization that's robust. And most importantly, it helps you identify the key elements of human problems, not technical problems. Technical problems are very easy to solve, right? Human problems are the ones that are difficult. So as an entrepreneur, you need to basically get that into your head and develop it. Next slide, please. We talked about what are investors looking for. Next slide, please. There are 3 areas. They're looking for revenue, good, quick turnaround of your ideas, market relevant ideas, original ideas. They're looking for very good business plan. They're looking for good research, strong validation, good presentation. They're looking for a good pitch, confident founders, good co-investors, very nice mentors, and a very strong team. Next slide. We talked about successful startups, and we talked about the 10 mantras. Next slide, please. And we talked about how you need to be in control, no matter what happens. This slide is very important. It's a slide because I think that anyone who's looking at this slide, I want you to absorb this slide very importantly, not just for yourself, for everybody else. If today you are having a situation where you think you're in trouble, you lost your job, or you think that you're going to be laid off, or you think you're going to lose all your business, it's not the end of the world. Why? It's a situation that you need to convince your brain that you can take control of. Maybe the elements of control are not visible now, but that does not change the fact that you can bring them to your control. Listen, everybody who's successful today has had a number of failures before. So I don't want you to feel depressed. I don't want you to feel sad. I don't want you to feel helpless. I want you to feel patient. I want you to experience patience to a different level so that you push your body to let yourself go through this failure, whatever it is, and get to the other side. There are a lot of people who can help you. People like me, I'll be more than happy to talk to anybody who feels stressed enough and distressful enough. I'm sure there are other people who will be more than willing to help you. The reason why I'm saying it is because when I read news about people being frustrated and taking some very extreme decisions in their life, no, you shouldn't. You're a very important person. You're a very important person to yourself. You're a very important person to your parents. You're a very important person to your family. You're a very important person to your friends. You're a very important person to the world. The world needs you. The world needs for you to exist. The world needs for your ideas to exist. The world needs for your energy to be there so that we can complete ourselves. So it's important that this slide is something that everybody looks at and realizes that I want all of you to understand, no matter what happens in your life, you're always in control. You're always in control. There's nothing that is not within your control. So always be confident, always be sure, and as an entrepreneur, take decisions that can allow you to grow, because if you succeed, a lot of jobs will be created. If you succeed, we can turn this whole pandemic of COVID-19 around and inshallah deliver the world a success that has never been witnessed before. Remember, we've come through worse in the past. It's just that our generation has not seen it, but the generations before us have. So this is our challenge, and we should take it head on, and entrepreneurship is definitely a good way to do it. Can we go to the next slide, please? If anybody wants to get in touch with me, you can reach me on these social media links that I've placed. there's a motto in my life that I follow. I say destinations do not matter. What matter is the direction you take today. So I don't want you to think about success. I don't want you to think about glory. I don't want you to think about Apple and Instagram. I want you to think about what you're doing with yourself today, the direction you take today, because that direction will head somewhere. So if you are in trouble today, don't worry. Take a direction point and you will move towards something better. So destinations do not matter. What matters is the direction you take today. I hope this little engagement today, thanks to ABCK for arranging it, has been helpful, and I'm open to take questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. And we actually have a question. One is asking, do you feel that it is safe to share your idea with 100 people that you don't know who might, take it and build it for themselves?
Well, strangely, I get asked that every time, right? So it's not a strange one. So number one, taking an idea is not something that you can secure because it's still an idea. And when you're discussing it, what you're doing is you're actually talking about something called surface level. So you're saying, do you agree with, for example, that everybody should not get into the elevator at the same time? Do you think because of COVID-19, do you think that this is a problem? Number one, your solution to the problem needs to be described in a very larger than life way, so that, listen, when strangers listen to stuff like this, nobody's walking on the road, sitting in a tram, sitting in a bus, sitting on a phone, waiting for you and me to come up with great ideas for them to change their life around and say, hey, I'm going to stop this beautiful job in the bank and I'm going to steal his idea. That is why I want you to talk to strangers, so that they don't steal your ideas. When you talk to family and friends, most likely, unfortunately, they would. So number one, be very generic. Don't be specific when you ask these 4 questions. But number two, it is important for them to be strangers because otherwise they won't be honest. Family and friends are polite. They will give you the answer you want to hear.
Thank you. And we have another question. If a startup fails, what happens to the investors? Would the founder be responsible to pay back the investment? And should founders be thinking about these chances of failure?
All right, so startup industry is the only industry where there is nothing besides your reputation for you to lose. And which is disappointing for me. I must admit that. Why? Because if you look at the startup fund in Kuwait, the startup fund in Kuwait has around 2 billion, I think, or 1 billion dinars as a fund. And there is very little that the fund can do if the entrepreneur fails. Globally as well, we've got very famous failures. So I'll give you one, which is WeWork, the co-working space, which failed phenomenally. So SoftBank, Mr. Sun, the founder of SoftBank, invested around, I think, 30 or 40 billion in it, went to list it in the stock market at around 70, 80 billion, and it came down to a value of around 6 to 7 billion. So it lost billions. The founder didn't lose anything. As a founder, you don't lose anything. But having said that, I don't want startup entrepreneurs to think that because there is no responsibility of paying the money back, well, your reputation is there, number one. And number two, what about credibility? Your credibility is lost. So I think to answer the question, there's no fallback, none whatsoever. Unless you're signing a document which is a loan agreement, which no startup founder does. At best, they do convertible notes. They never sign a loan agreement. Otherwise, they're giving away equity in return for the fund. So no, there's no fallback.
Okay, and what about investing on the branding? Do you think this is a good idea at the initial stages of, starting a business?
Can I understand the question? Investing in branding? Are you talking?
Yeah, like the marketing and the branding aspects of the brand itself.
Okay, so if you've gone through the phases that I discussed, if you've gone through all the phases and you finish validation and you feel strongly about what you're doing, then yes, you should, because how else would you get your business to be visible to people? It's not the only thing that you can do. There are many other things that you can do. You can go to social media and create a network of influencers who can promote you, which is these days far more successful than just investing in a marketing campaign. Social media has more reach than typical marketing campaigns these days.
And if you have, for example, business partners locally, and you want to find business partners outside of Kuwait, let's say in the UK or anywhere else, what would be your recommendation for doing so?
All right, so if you're talking about business partners from the standpoint of co-founders or from investors?
I believe co-founders.
Okay, so if it is co-founders, then yeah, I think I would encourage that, because any startup, I'm currently working on something like that right now between UK and Kuwait, but in the health tech space. So I'm trying to collaborate between Kuwait-based health tech entrepreneurs and UK-based health tech entrepreneurs, getting them together to say, hey guys, you're working on this, he's working on that, she's working on this, and she's working on that. Can you collaborate? Because if you collaborated, the investors would be far more excited. It is lovely for any investor sitting in Kuwait or sitting in the UK to look at a startup that has you, a girl in Kuwait, and that guy in the UK, and both of you are founders, because they realize that the amount of experience and exposure you bring is big, number one. Number two, they realize that this startup has global ramifications, because now they know this will be launched in London as well. If it's launched in London, it becomes a global startup, right? So it is a good idea. It is really a good idea. Whoever is interested in that can get in touch with me, and I can probably help them connect if I understand what exactly they're working on. But very soon I'm working on a platform to help global entrepreneurs connect with Kuwait-based entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much. And one last question. So how can entrepreneurs seek mentoring to ensure that they're following the correct process and timeline?
All right, it all depends on what is your line of business, what's the stream that you're taking for your startup, and then you have to check whether the mentor that you're looking at, it's just like interviewing an employee, right? So you kind of look into the questions that you need to ask this employee. So that mentor, you need to ask him certain questions that are important to you. So one of the questions is, for example, when people ask me, can you mentor us? The straightforward answer is yes. But if you ask me the next question and say, do you have time to give me every month? I might say no. So maybe you don't need a mentor who has no time every month, has time every quarter. What you need is a mentor every week. So you need to kind of set your questions that you need to ask mentors correctly, so that you pick up mentors that are beneficial for you, that can add value.
Okay, thank you very much for answering the questions. And again, thank you so much, Mr. Abdulla, for your support today and for being the speaker for this insightful topic. Thank you to everyone else for attending, and we look forward to seeing you in the future webinars. Please don't forget to follow us on social media for more upcoming events and initiatives at ABCK-1985 and ABCK-AmCham Kuwait on LinkedIn. And I hope everyone has a very good day.
All right, take care, everybody. Be safe, and continue your vision to be successful and great.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abdulla.
Take care. See you. Bye.